They told me they couldn't imagine Thanksgiving without me. David said it himself on the phone, all warmth and syrup, like he'd just remembered he had a mother. He said, "Come out, Mom. It's been too long. The kids want to see you. Lauren misses you. It'll be weird if you're not here." So I believed him. I packed my overnight bag like it mattered. One blackberry pie in a glass dish, wrapped in an old towel. A new cardigan, green wool, the soft kind that clings to your arms like a good memory. I brought the silver earrings I once promised Nora when she turned 20. And I packed my patience, folded it neat like socks. Then I waited. I was standing near Gate 4B at Boise Airport. My flight had landed 46 minutes ago. The arrivals board blinked quietly above me. Around me, the world moved like it knew where to go. Families clustered like magnets. A woman held up a handmade sign that said, "Welcome home, Daddy." A young man walked past with a bouquet of supermarket lilies and a paper coffee cup. A toddler shrieked when she saw her grandma and ran full speed into her arms. And me? I stood alone next to a vending machine that smelled faintly of vinegar chips and overripe fruit. My coat was folded over one arm. My suitcase stood upright like a pet waiting for command. The pie was still intact inside. I kept checking my phone. The last text from Lauren had a winking emoji and said, "Can't wait to hug you. Drive safe if you Uber." That was 3 hours ago. I'd replied, "Just landed. Gate 4B. I'm right under the big exit sign." No answer. At first, I didn't sit down. Somehow, sitting felt like surrender. Like once I let my knees give in, it would become real. That I was the woman who waited alone at airports, hoping not to be the only one left standing. You ever notice how loud silence gets in places like that? Every time the automatic doors hissed open, my eyes flicked toward the walkway. A flash of hope. A rising. And then nothing. Again. Then my phone buzzed. A quick jolt in my palm. I almost smiled, thinking it was David. A text, maybe. "Sorry, traffic. Be there in 5. Or a selfie of the kids holding a sign. But it wasn't a message. It was a notification from Nora's photo story. I tapped it out of habit, not expectation. And there it was. The photo. David, in the blue flannel I sent last winter. Lauren, glowing like she always did on camera. The kids, grinning. A roasted turkey at the center of the table, candles flickering, napkins folded into triangles. A pie sat near the corner. Not mine. The caption read, "Full bellies, full hearts. Happy Thanksgiving from our crew to yours." I stared at that screen like maybe something would shift. Like maybe I'd missed myself in the corner. Maybe my arm, my sweater, a reflection in the wine glass. But I wasn't there. Not even a shadow of me. And there wasn't room for one. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just closed the app, pulled my coat onto my shoulders, and walked. I passed the taxis. Ignored the shuttle signs. Didn't look back. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew exactly what I was leaving behind. You ever have that moment? That hard click of clarity? It doesn't scream. It doesn't even hurt at first. It just settles in, heavy and certain. They weren't coming. Not late. Not ever. And that's when it hit me. Not all at once. Just this slow, dull certainty that spread like cold through my chest. This wasn't a mistake. This was a decision. And I had been the one uninvited without anyone saying a word. You ready for the rest? It doesn't get softer from here. But it gets sharper. And sometimes that's what it takes to cut your way out. 3 days before my flight, David called me. That should have been the first clue. He doesn't usually call. Most of our communication lives in forwarded emails and one-line texts, usually ending in a thumbs up or, "Cool, thanks." Calls are for birthdays or bills. Never just because. But this time, my phone lit up at 8:43 p.m. A quiet Tuesday. I was watching an old rerun of Antiques Roadshow, sipping chamomile tea, trying not to think about how still the house had become lately. When his name flashed on the screen, I sat up a little straighter. Pressed answer with the same hopeful hesitation I imagine you'd use cracking open a long-sealed envelope. "Hey, Mom." His voice was extra cheerful. Soft-edged. That careful tone people use when they're about to ask for something. I said, "Hi, sweetheart. Everything okay?" Yeah. Just wondering what your plans are for Thanksgiving." I smiled without realizing it. That's how easy it is to fall back into hope. The kind that's been starved long enough to take scraps and call it dinner. I told him I wasn't doing much. That I planned to roast a small chicken, maybe make mashed potatoes if my joints didn't act up. Watch a movie. Stay cozy. Just me and the heater and maybe some talk radio. Nothing special. He paused. I could hear him breathing through the line. Then he said, "Nora was asking about you." That part, Nora was asking, it hooked something soft in me. Then came the rest. "We'd love to have you out here this year. All of us together. It wouldn't feel right without you." That line. Wouldn't feel right without you. God, how long had it been since I heard something like that? Not, "We need you." Not, "Can you bring dessert?" Just that quiet implication of wanting. There's a difference between being needed and being wanted. One comes with duty. The other, grace. So I said yes. He didn't offer to book the ticket. Didn't mention chipping in. And I didn't ask. That part's on me. I've spent most of my adult life mistaking self-sufficiency for pride. Sometimes, they look the same. After we hung up, I sat on the couch for a while, fingers still curled around the phone. My tea had gone cold. The TV kept playing, but I couldn't follow the appraisals anymore. I just kept replaying that phrase in my head. Wouldn't feel right without you. The words fit so neatly into the hollow space I'd been ignoring. I think there's a moment, maybe it comes with age, maybe just with enough letdowns, where even cautious people like me forget how much they still want to feel chosen. Not out of convenience. Not as a checkbox. But truly chosen. That night, I opened my laptop and looked up flights. There was one direct from Medford to Boise, early morning on Thanksgiving Day. It was on sale. I booked it. I even paid an extra $12 to choose a seat near the front. Silly maybe, but I liked the idea of boarding early. Of being counted sooner. You ever pay extra just to feel seen? The next morning, I pulled out my red folder. The one labeled Emergencies. Inside was the envelope I'd tucked away last Christmas. A few $100s I hadn't touched. It was supposed to be for a new water heater or maybe dental work. But I figured this counted. After all, what's the point of saving warmth if you never get to feel it? Later that day, I drove to the little gift shop near the post office. Picked up 2 puzzle books for the twins. A tin of jasmine tea for Lauren. They'd never said they liked puzzles or jasmine, but I remembered her once mentioning it smelled like her grandmother's garden. That was enough. Then I bought something I hadn't planned. A cardigan. Green, soft knit, 3 wooden buttons, pockets deep enough for my hands. The tag read, "Forest Moss." I tried it on in front of a cloudy mirror near the register. It fit. And for a moment, so did I. You know that feeling? When something hugs your shoulders just right and you start to believe you might belong in the picture, too? That night, I packed. Not out of eagerness. Out of caution. Hope, when it returns, often comes dressed as preparation. I checked the weather. Low 40s. Overcast. I took the trash out early. Set the heat on low. Filled the bird feeder out back just in case a storm came. I didn't tell my neighbor I was leaving. Didn't tell the ladies from Bridge Club. I didn't want to jinx it. Or maybe I didn't want to hear that pause. That gentle suspicion people give you when you say your family wants you around, and they remember how many holidays you've spent alone. I wanted to believe it for myself, just once. That they meant it this time. That when David said, "It wouldn't feel right without you," it came from somewhere real. Looking back, I wonder, did he rehearse that line? Did he know exactly what to say to make me come running? I used to think intentions were enough. That if someone meant well, that counted for something. But now I'm not so sure. Intentions don't pick you up from the airport. Intentions don't save you a seat at the table. What they do, sometimes, is build a bridge just wide enough for you to walk out on. But never quite back. And that was the beginning of the end. Even if I didn't know it yet. The day after I booked my flight, I made a list. Not a dramatic one. Not the kind you post on the fridge for everyone to see. Just a quiet, handwritten list tucked into the corner of my old notebook. Things to bring. Things to do. Things to hope for, though I didn't label them that way. The suitcase came down from the closet shelf with a soft thud. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at it for a long moment before unzipping it. It smelled faintly of cedar and lemon oil. I hadn't used it in over a year. I started with the cardigan. Forest moss, 3 buttons, sleeves a bit long. I folded it carefully and laid it on top of the quilt. Next came the gift tin of tea for Lauren. I added a small jar of apple butter I'd made last month. I wasn't sure if the kids liked it, but it felt like something a grandma brings. Then I wrapped the puzzle books for the twins. One with mazes, one with riddles. I tucked a tiny mechanical pencil in the spine of each. That detail made me smile for some reason. Maybe because I remembered how Nora used to line up her school pencils by length. She was 6. So particular. So serious. It's strange what we remember. Mid-afternoon, I walked downtown to that little general store near Maine. The one that still carries ribbon by the yard and stamps with birds on them. I bought wrapping paper, a fresh lip balm, a new pair of support socks, and a lavender sachet to freshen the suitcase. On the way home, I stopped by the grocery and picked up everything I needed to make the pie. Blackberry, not pumpkin. My mother always made blackberry pies in the fall. Said it tasted like the in-between season. Tart, but sweet enough to stay. That evening, I washed the glass pie dish, dried it with a linen towel, and set it on the counter like it mattered. By the time I sat down for dinner, leftover lentil stew and half a cornbread muffin, the sky had turned the color of bruised plums. I left the dishes in the sink and turned on the radio. Classical. Something slow. Strings. I sat in the dark for a while, letting it wash over me. You ever have that feeling like you're rehearsing something sacred? Not out loud. Just in the way you move. The way you fold a shirt, the way you tighten the lid on a jar. That's how I felt. Like maybe if I got it all just right, they'd see the effort before the outcome. The next day, I did laundry. Set the thermostat to 60. Took out the trash. Left a note for my neighbor in case snow came early. I didn't tell the book club I'd be gone. I didn't want to answer the questions. Helen, where are you off to? Helen, isn't that a long trip for just a weekend? No one ever says it out loud, but there's a way people talk when they think you're too old to be hopeful. A tone like gentle disbelief. I didn't want to hear it. Instead, I focused on packing. Black slacks. A knit blouse with tiny buttons. My company shoes. Not quite dressy, but not worn through either. I packed my medication, a bottle of hand lotion, a paperback I'd already read twice. And the earrings. The silver ones. Simple hoops. I'd once planned to give them to Ruby for her 16th birthday. But the box was still in my drawer, unopened. I held them for a moment, then added them to the bag, this time for Nora. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and cinnamon by the time the pie cooled. I wrapped it in foil and then again in parchment. Slid it into a pie carrier I hadn't used since Emma's graduation party. I wrote a note on the top with a felt tip marker. For Thanksgiving. Handle with care. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from nerves, exactly. From something more restless than that. I laid in bed, listening to the radiator click and groan. My hands folded over my stomach, blanket pulled high. I watched the ceiling. Thought about the last time someone had asked me to come to anything without needing something in return. I couldn't remember. I used to think that love always came with requirements. That was the cost. You bring the pie. You bring the gifts. You bring the stories. You laugh at the tired jokes, ask about school, smooth over the awkward silences. You become the glue. The gentle middle. The one who doesn't complain. But somewhere between birthdays and forgotten thank you notes, that kind of love starts to wear thin. I wanted this trip to be different. Not a duty. Not a performance. Just a seat at the table because they wanted me there. I set 3 alarms for Thanksgiving morning. One on my phone, one on the kitchen timer, one on the little clock radio in the guest room. Just in case. When the sun came up, I made tea. Earl Grey. Poured it into my travel mug with the little chip near the rim. Ate half a banana, wrapped the other half for later. I double-checked my flight, printed a backup copy just in case the app didn't work. My boarding pass said seat 7C. Aisle. I smiled. Close to the front. At 7:48, I wheeled my suitcase out the door. Locked the front twice. Pulled my gloves on, one finger at a time. The air was sharp. Dry. The kind of morning where you can see your breath even after the sun is up. I stepped off my porch and headed toward the cab I'd booked. Behind me, the porch light clicked off. I didn't look back. Some part of me already knew I wouldn't be coming home the same. The plane landed early. We touched down at 3:07, wheels kissing pavement with barely a jolt. I remember thinking, that's a good omen. A smooth arrival. Maybe the rest of the day would follow that lead. I gathered my things slowly. Pulled on my coat. Smoothed my skirt. Checked my bag twice to make sure the pie hadn't shifted. Then I walked through the terminal toward the arrivals area at Boise. It's not a large airport. You can see the whole baggage claim from one end. Clean, quiet, carpeted in that strange patterned gray that tries not to show footprints. People were already crowding near the exit. Kids bouncing in place. Someone holding a small white dog in a puffer jacket. A couple hugging too tightly near the windows. Behind them, the big digital board blinked over and over. Flight 602 from Medford. Arrived. I stood beneath it, next to a large potted plant. My suitcase beside me. My coat folded over one arm. And I waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I didn't sit. I don't know why. Maybe because standing made it seem temporary. Like the moment they walked in, I'd already be upright. Ready. Not someone who'd been waiting. The families around me thinned out. One by one, people were collected. Named. Claimed. Their exits marked with smiles, waves, arms wrapping around shoulders. I checked my phone. Again. Still no message. I reopened the last text from Lauren. See you soon. Can't wait for pie. I had replied, flight lands at 3:10. Gate 4B. I'm outside now. That was 22 minutes ago. I told myself they were running late. That the kids were being wild. That the turkey needed another 20 minutes and they lost track of time. But there's a moment when the excuses start to wear thin. When your body knows the truth before your heart agrees. I pulled my coat on. It was warm inside, but something about standing there exposed, pie in hand, made me feel cold. You ever felt that? Like the air around you knows before you do? My phone buzzed. A quick flutter in my palm. Not a text. A social notification. I hesitated. Then tapped. And there it was. A photo. Just posted. David, smiling wide, his hair longer than I remembered. Lauren, tan and laughing in her usual overlit way. The twins, both with cranberry-stained lips. All of them seated around a table lit with candles. Turkey, sweet potatoes, rolls in a basket. A pie. Not mine. The caption said, full bellies. Fuller hearts. Thanksgiving with the best crew. I stared at it. Then zoomed in. Scanned each face. Each plate. Each space at the table. Counted the chairs. There were no extras. No sign of me. Not even an empty place setting that could pass as forgotten. It wasn't that I'd been missed. I hadn't been expected. I stood still, my phone still in my hand, thumb hovering like I might tap again. But I didn't. I didn't cry. Not right then. I just lowered the phone. Slid it into my coat pocket. Picked up my suitcase. Turned toward the exit. My pie was still intact. But something inside me wasn't. I walked out the automatic doors. The late afternoon chill slapped at my cheeks. The sky had turned the color of dishwater. Dim and heavy. No one noticed me leaving. No one called my name. You ever have that moment when it hits you, not like a blow, but a slow, steady sinking, that you weren't part of the plan? That you never were? That's what that was. I passed a man holding balloons shaped like turkeys. He looked right through me. And still, I didn't cry. Because it wasn't sadness yet. It was something else. Something quieter. Colder. Clearer. Not disappointment. Recognition. This wasn't a delay. It was the truth, arriving on time. And that truth, that they had smiled for that photo, lifted their glasses, captioned their cheer, while I stood under a blinking sign with pie in my hands. That's when it changed. That's when I knew. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And I had just been erased. I didn't take a cab. Not because I wanted to walk. I didn't. My shoes weren't made for it. The soles were too thin. I could feel every crack in the sidewalk. But standing there, outside the arrivals gate, under that dumb airplane sign, I knew I couldn't just wait anymore. So I started walking. Pulled the suitcase behind me. The wheels made that soft plastic scrape against the pavement. My pie bumped gently in the bag. The cold crept in fast. It had that dry Idaho sharpness that finds the gaps between your fingers, the sliver of skin above your socks. My breath came out in little clouds. No one looked my way. Past the shuttle bay. Past the taxi line. I passed a young woman in a checkered coat carrying 2 hot drinks. She veered toward an older lady sitting on a bench. "Here, Mom," she said, pressing the cup into her hands. "Extra cream, no sugar." I didn't mean to stare. The mother looked older than me. Hair white and flat under a knit cap. But her smile? It broke something soft in my chest. A real smile. The kind you don't have to earn. I kept walking. You know that kind of ache that isn't sharp, but settles low? Like a rock in your stomach? That's what I felt. I tried calling David. Not because I thought he'd answer. But because I needed to hear the dial tone confirm what I already knew. Voicemail. I left a message. My voice sounded normal. Like I was still someone used to being included. "Hi, honey. I just landed a little while ago. I'm outside near the shuttle signs. No rush, I'll wait a bit." I didn't say anything about the photo. Didn't mention the caption. Or the full table. Or the pie that wasn't mine. Sometimes silence is the only thing that tells the whole story. I sat down on a bench near the rental car lot. The cold of the metal soaked through my coat. My knees started to complain. I adjusted the pie on my lap. Watched strangers find each other and drive away. A boy ran up to his grandfather yelling, "Pop, pop." They high-fived like teammates. A woman got into the back seat of a Jeep and immediately opened a Tupperware of deviled eggs. The air smelled like exhaust and stuffing. My phone stayed quiet. Not a buzz. Not a blink. You ever have that realization that you're the only one waiting? That everyone else already got what they came for? I didn't cry. Not then. Because it wasn't sadness. Not exactly. It was clarity. A slow, even kind of knowing. That table wasn't missing a chair. It was complete. Complete without me. And that, somehow, was worse than being forgotten. Being remembered would have meant someone felt guilt. Or maybe regret. But they hadn't forgotten. They had celebrated. Posted. Captioned. Laughed. And I was never in the frame to begin with. That's the part no one talks about. The part that makes the breath leave your body without warning. Not that they moved on without you. But that they never once looked back. My hands had gone numb. I tucked them into my sleeves. A man passed by pushing a stroller. He gave me a nod. Nothing more. Just that small human acknowledgement. I nodded back. That moment felt more honest than any holiday invitation I'd received in years. Funny how strangers can see you clearer than your own family. It was almost 5 by then. The sun dipped below the parking structure. That heavy early winter darkness started crawling in. I could have called a hotel. Booked a ride. But I just sat. Watched the shadows stretch. Watched the people disappear into cars that knew their names. And I realized something. I wasn't heartbroken. Not the way movies show it. No weeping, no collapsing on a bench. No sad music. Just that slow, cellular truth. That after years of hoping they'd come around, they had. Just not in my direction. And if I was going to keep breathing, it had to be for me. Not for a seat at their table. Not for a slice of something that was never mine. That was the moment I stood up. Not from strength. From necessity. Because waiting any longer would have meant accepting something that I couldn't. That they'd set the table. And left me off the list. I kept walking. Not because I had a destination. I didn't. I just knew I couldn't sit at that bench any longer, watching families fold themselves into cars while mine toasted each other with cider and a pie that wasn't mine. The sidewalk curved along the edge of the airport parking lot. A few streetlights buzzed as they flickered on. One of them blinked twice, then went dark. The air smelled like antifreeze and dry leaves. My suitcase made a soft rattle behind me, steady and loyal. The pie carrier bumped against my leg. My shoes weren't meant for long walks. Especially not this kind. Airport to nowhere kind. I could feel the blisters forming already, that raw stretch just behind the heel. Still, I kept moving. Somewhere past the car rental returns and a shuttered strip mall, I saw a sign. Lou's Griddle. The neon letters flickered. The L had burnt out. The windows were fogged up, paper leaves taped to the inside. A plastic turkey clung lopsided to the glass door. Inside, the lights were dim but warm. Orange, amber. The kind of light that doesn't ask you to smile. So I walked in. A bell above the door gave a tired jingle. The smell hit first. Grease, coffee, and something sweet, maybe cinnamon. My stomach growled in protest. It had been hours since the banana I ate at sunrise. A waitress looked up from behind the counter. Short brown ponytail. Apron with a bleach stain on one hip. Maybe mid-40s. She gave me a quick once-over and said, without fanfare, "Happy Thanksgiving, hon." I nodded. "You too." She jerked her head toward the booths. "Sit anywhere." There were 6 people inside. A man in a navy UPS jacket slouched over pancakes. An older couple sat across from each other in silence, both reading different sections of the same newspaper. A teenager at the counter scrolled through his phone with a face like he wanted to be anywhere else. I picked a booth near the window. The seat was warm. Someone had just left. There was a sugar packet on the floor. I didn't mind. I pulled my coat off slowly, laid it beside me. My fingers were stiff. The suitcase sat upright next to me. I placed the pie on the table like it belonged there. The waitress came over and handed me a laminated menu. "Kitchen's a little slow, just so you know. We've got turkey, stuffing, mac and cheese, and 3 kinds of pie." I asked what kinds. "Pecan, lemon chess, and blackberry," she said. "The blackberry's good. Tart but not too." I nodded. "Blackberry, please. And some tea, if it's hot." She scribbled something, then smiled. "That's probably the best choice you'll make all day." I almost laughed. Almost. She walked away. I stared out the foggy window. My reflection hovered there, faint and soft. Hair a little flat. Eyes tired. No lipstick left. I hadn't looked in a mirror since I got off the plane. I looked like someone in transition. Between homes. Between roles. You ever realize how much of yourself you've been keeping quiet? I didn't touch my phone. Didn't open the photo again. Didn't refresh for updates or explanations. There was nothing they could say that would make it feel different. And for once, I didn't want to give them the chance. The pie arrived on a white plate, still warm. The crust was golden, crimped by hand. A scoop of whipped cream leaned to one side, slowly melting. The tea came in a cracked mug with a floral pattern. Steam rose gently. I took a bite. Tart. Sweet. More real than anything I'd tasted in months. Maybe it was the berries. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the fact that I hadn't made it for anyone but me. I ate slowly. No rush. No one to impress. No one waiting to try a bite before even thanking me. It was just me. And a slice of pie I didn't bake. On a day I didn't plan to spend alone. And still, I was here. Breathing. Upright. Not broken. Not yet. The waitress returned with the check. "Want another slice to go?" she asked, pen already in hand. I looked at the pie. Then back at her. "Yes," I said. "For later." She smiled. Smart. I sipped my tea as she boxed it up. Outside, the sky had darkened completely. A car pulled into the lot. A woman stepped out, her coat too thin, clutching a bouquet of discount roses. I didn't look away. Something in me had shifted. Not enough to feel better. But enough to feel still. You know that moment? When you stop chasing explanations and start choosing peace, even if it's small? That was this. Not victory. Not yet. But the beginning of something I hadn't had in years. A seat I didn't have to earn. A slice I didn't have to serve. Just me. And the decision to keep going. I didn't plan on staying anywhere. I hadn't booked a hotel, didn't research neighborhoods, didn't know which side of Boise was safe after dark. I thought I'd be at David's house by now. Sitting on their couch, a throw blanket across my knees, watching the kids bicker over board games while Lauren reheated the rolls. Instead, I was standing outside Lou's Griddle with a slice of pie in a white paper bag, the air sharp and windless, and my suitcase making that soft plastic scrape across cracked pavement as I walked. I didn't feel scared. Just done. You know that bone-deep kind of tired that doesn't ask for sleep? That just wants a door that locks, a light that switches off, and a room that doesn't expect you to speak. I found it 2 blocks down. Canyon View Inn. It was one of those roadside motels with faded siding and a flickering neon sign that said, vacancy. No branding. No frills. Just a low roofline and a soda machine outside humming louder than the cars. The front desk was behind a plexiglass window. A man with silver hair and a football game playing on a portable TV sat behind it, legs up on a milk crate. He didn't look up until I cleared my throat. Need a room? Yes. Just one night. Single. He slid a form across the counter. ID and card. The pen he handed me was chewed on the end. I filled everything out neatly. Helen Bishop. No vehicle. 1 guest. He gave me a key on a plastic fob. Room 103. End of the row, he said. Left side. Thank you, I said. My voice sounded more polite than I felt. The room was what you'd expect. 2 mismatched lamps. A bedspread in a brown floral print from 3 decades ago. Thin carpet. A television with actual buttons. But it was clean. And warm. And mine, just for now. I shut the door and let the lock click behind me. The noise was oddly comforting. I took off my coat. My shoes. Sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the blank TV screen. It reflected me faintly. A vague silhouette. Hair flat. Shoulders slumped. I looked like someone arriving at something, not a destination, but a line. You ever sit down in a strange place and feel more at home than you have in years? I opened the pie bag. Ate slowly, cross-legged on the bed. The fork was plastic. The whipped cream had flattened. But the taste was still there. It was the first piece of pie I'd eaten without sharing in years. I didn't check my phone until much later. It had vibrated twice while I was brushing my teeth with the complimentary packet. I let it sit on the nightstand, screen down. When I finally picked it up, there were 3 missed calls. 2 from David. 1 from Lauren. A text, too. Mom. Where are you? No, I'm sorry. No, we didn't mean to forget. Just confusion. Like I had disappeared. Like I had broken the plan. I didn't reply. I didn't owe them the story. Instead, I unzipped the front pocket of my suitcase and pulled out my notebook. The little red one I keep for grocery lists and notes to self. I flipped to a fresh page. And I wrote. I am not an afterthought. I am not a backup plan. I am not an extra fork at someone else's table. Then I underlined it. Twice. I stared at that sentence for a long time. You know what's strange? I didn't cry. A year ago, 5 years ago, I might have. But not tonight. Tonight, there was only stillness. The kind that comes after you stop waiting for someone to fix what they broke. Not anger. Not grief. Just space. Like stepping into a room where the air hasn't been touched in years and realizing you can breathe again. I turned off the lamp. The heater kicked in with a soft groan. Outside, I could hear a dog bark once. A truck pass on the highway. Somewhere nearby, a man coughed, a wet, hollow sound. Life going on. Even without apology. Even without me explaining myself. I fell asleep with my clothes still on. The red notebook on the nightstand. The pie bag empty beside me. No text sent. No explanations given. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt free. The motel room was silent, except for the hum of the heater and the occasional crack of its old metal frame adjusting to the night. I woke early, before the sun, as I always do. Years of teaching and raising children will hardwire your body to wake before it's wanted. I made a cup of coffee using the little drip machine in the corner. The packet was labeled Mountain Morning. It tasted like cardboard and burnt toast. But it was hot, and it gave me something to hold. Outside, the parking lot was still. A single crow pecked at something near the curb. Fog had rolled in overnight, blurring the outline of everything past the road sign. I pulled the red notebook from my suitcase and sat down at the small desk by the window. A plastic chair. A thin pad of motel stationery beside the Bible. I reached for a blank page. I didn't plan what I was going to say. But once I picked up the pen, the words came. Nora, sweetheart. You once told me, after your mom's surgery, that I was your safe person. I remember you said it without blinking. Like it was obvious. You have no idea what that meant to me. Not because it made me feel important. But because it reminded me that I still existed in someone's daily landscape. Not just in photo albums or old recipes. But now. Present tense. This Thanksgiving didn't go the way I thought it would. I came to Boise. I brought the pie. I wore the new cardigan. I waited by the exit sign with my best shoes on and the kind of hope I hadn't dared carry in years. But they weren't there. No one showed up. And by the time I saw the family photo online, everyone laughing around a table that never had a chair for me, it wasn't a surprise. It was just confirmation. I don't want you to carry this like a stone in your pocket. That's not why I'm writing. I just need to tell someone the truth. Someone who might believe it matters. Because what happened wasn't loud. No yelling. No slamming doors. It was quiet. And that's the part that stays. You know, I used to think silence meant peace. That if I just stayed steady, didn't cause trouble, didn't ask for more, eventually things would settle. People would notice. Come around. But now I think silence just makes it easier to be erased. When we don't speak up, we give others permission to speak for us. Or worse, to forget we were ever in the room. This morning, I watched the steam from my coffee rise into the motel mirror. I looked at my reflection and didn't feel old or foolish. I felt awake. There's a strange kind of freedom in that. I'm not writing this because I need you to fix anything. I'm writing because I wanted you to know that, even in the middle of being left behind, I found something. I found the line. The one I won't cross again. The line between hoping and allowing. And maybe that's the first real gift I've given myself in a long time. I tucked the pen into the spine of the notebook and sat back. My hand ached. But it felt clean. Empty in the right way. You ever feel that after saying something you held in too long? Like your chest finally has room again? I tore the page out carefully. Folded it into thirds. Slipped it into an envelope I'd brought for her birthday card, just in case. I walked to the front desk and asked if they sold stamps. The young man behind the counter looked half asleep but nodded. He slid a small sheet toward me with a design of snowy evergreens. I bought one. Wrote her address from memory. Nora Bishop. 1320 Hollow Ridge Lane. Portland, Oregon 97203. No return address. Just my name. That was enough. Back in the room, I packed slowly. Folded the cardigan neatly. Zipped up the now empty pie container. I didn't rush. There was nowhere to be. No one expecting me. But there was something waiting. A version of myself I'd stopped tending to. The one that wrote letters not out of grief, but of recognition. And maybe that's where things really begin. Not with confrontation. But with truth spoken quietly. To someone who listens. The next morning, I was at the bank 5 minutes before it opened. The front doors were still locked. A small group had formed outside, 2 young women in yoga pants sipping lattes, a man in a neon safety vest scrolling his phone. I stood to the side, gloved hands tucked into the pockets of my navy coat. The same one I'd worn on the plane. The same one that still smelled faintly of motel soap and diner coffee. Frost covered the edges of the windows. The kind of soft, white crust that makes everything look peaceful from a distance. At 9 sharp, the doors clicked open. A woman with a floral scarf and tight ponytail greeted us inside. I didn't recognize her, but the place felt the same. Same scent of printer ink and lemon floor polish. Same plastic pens on curly cords. Same small dish of butterscotch candies at the teller counter. I stepped forward when she called, "Next." "Good morning," I said. "I need to speak with someone about my accounts." "All of them." She blinked. "Just a second." She typed something into her keyboard, glanced at the screen, then picked up the phone and called to the back. A moment later, a younger man with a clipped beard and a polite smile appeared. He wore a charcoal sweater over a collared shirt and introduced himself as Colin. "Come on back, Mrs. Bishop. Let's get you settled." He led me into one of those glass-walled offices along the hallway. The kind with one framed landscape photo and a vase of fake succulents. I sat. He asked if I'd like water or coffee. I said no. He pulled up my accounts on his screen and said, "What can I help you with today?" I looked at him. Measured the shape of his kindness. "I want to suspend all automatic transfers to my family. Every single one. Effective today." He stopped typing. His eyebrows lifted, just slightly. Then he nodded. "Understood. Let me pull the details." A few moments passed as he tapped at his keyboard. The screen reflected faintly in his glasses. "You've got several," he said. "Monthly contributions to David and Lauren's joint account. 2 tuition-related disbursements. Car insurance premiums. And a semi-annual lump sum labeled family assistance." I nodded. "Stop them all. Leave the charitable donations alone." He didn't ask why. But his eyes softened. "Of course. I'll process the cancellations. Would you like to close those channels entirely?" "Not yet. But I want every transfer frozen for now. And I want documentation confirming the change." "Yes, ma'am." He clicked a few more things. I sat in that chair and watched the world outside move slowly past the window. A mother walked by holding a toddler's hand. A delivery truck idled too long near the hydrant. The sun had finally risen above the post office. The frost was starting to melt. You know what I thought about while I waited? Every time I'd said yes without thinking. Yes to covering car repairs. Yes to paying the summer camp deposit when their bonus was late. Yes to helping just until things stabilized. And every time, I told myself it was fine. That I was glad to give. That mothers don't keep score. But that's not true, is it? We do keep score. We just don't admit it. We file it away in quiet places, in the back of a drawer, under, "they're trying," behind, "they don't mean it." But it adds up. Little by little, the balance shifts. Until you're the only one depositing anything into the relationship. And they're just making withdrawals. "Done," Colin said, breaking the silence. "Everything's been cancelled. No more transfers." I nodded. My voice was quiet, but steady. "Good. I'd like to revoke David Bishop's power of attorney as well." His fingers paused again. "You do have a standing POA on file," he confirmed. "Would you like to remove his access entirely?" "Yes. Immediately." He printed a short form and passed it across the desk. I signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have. He gathered the papers into a small folder and handed it to me. "You're all set, Mrs. Bishop. We'll keep these on file, but everything you requested is in effect now." "Thank you." I stood slowly. My knees ached a bit from the cold. As I turned to leave, he added, "If there's anything else, don't hesitate to call." I nodded once. Then left. Outside, the frost had thinned. The sidewalks were damp, the kind of gray sheen that comes right before the sun wins. I didn't rush. Stopped at the bakery on the corner. Bought myself a cinnamon roll. Still warm. No box, just a napkin. Walked home with the bag tucked into one pocket, sugar melting into my gloves. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a provider. I felt like a person. One with limits. One who finally remembered that giving doesn't count if no one notices you're bleeding. The law office was tucked between a flower shop and a dentist's office on Chestnut Street. Nothing dramatic. No brass plaque. Just a sliding glass door and a hanging sign that read, Tanner and West, LLP. I'd passed it 100 times but never had reason to go in. Until now. Inside, it smelled like lemon polish and old air. A receptionist in a maroon sweater greeted me without standing up. Appointment name? Helen Bishop. She checked the screen. One moment. Mr. West will be right with you. The waiting area had low chairs, stiff cushions, a coffee table with neatly arranged magazines. Mostly business and estate planning. Someone had opened a window slightly. I could hear traffic come through it. I sat, hands folded. Bag at my feet. A small envelope inside with the most current copy of my will, notes I'd scribbled on hotel stationery, and the name Nora written 3 times at the top in careful print. Mr. West emerged after a few minutes. Mid-60s, white beard trimmed close, wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a navy suit and looked like someone who still read the paper with a real mug of coffee. No travel cup. No app alerts. He extended a hand. Helen. Nice to meet you in person. You too. He led me into a small room with books lining one wall and a window that looked out onto a parking lot. No view. Just a real desk. A real chair. I liked that. We sat. He pulled out a yellow legal pad. Clicked his pen. So. Tell me what's changed. I took a breath. I want to revise my trust. Not just the beneficiaries. The entire structure. He nodded. All right. Who do you want listed? I unfolded the envelope. Handed him the sheet on top. I want to set up a trust for Nora. Not her parents. Not her brother. Just her. I saw his eyebrows lift slightly. Not judgment. Just surprise. She's 16, I added. But I want it set up with a phased release. Education first. Then life support. Then, eventually, full access if she chooses a path that honors the values I believe in. And you want to remove your son entirely? Yes. The word came out calm. Unshaken. Yes. He asked me to walk through the details. We discussed the assets. The home. Retirement. The modest investments I'd built over 30 years of teaching and saving and saying no to myself so others could have yes. As we spoke, I noticed my voice never trembled. I didn't apologize once. I didn't over-explain. You ever notice how often women explain themselves? Even in rooms where we're the ones signing the checks? Not today. Mr. West paused at one point and said, "Would you like to include a statement? A letter of intent, perhaps? Something Nora can read when the time comes?" Yes, I said. I already wrote one. He took the letter gently. Didn't read it. Just placed it into the file beside the paperwork. I liked that about him. Respect, without curiosity. We continued for over an hour. Paper after paper. Questions about clauses and percentages and contingencies. I answered each one. Steady. Clear. At one point, I caught my reflection in the window glass. The faintest version of myself. And I thought, not, what happened to her, but, there you are. That was the moment I realized something. This wasn't about punishment. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was simply about choosing. Choosing who to trust. Choosing where to place the seeds of your legacy. And choosing to stop handing your future to people who can't even hold your presence. Mr. West wrapped up the session with a few notes about next steps. Filing, witnesses, final signatures. I'll have everything ready within the week. Do you want us to notify your previous executor? I shook my head. No. They'll know when they need to. He gave a small nod. Very well. He stood. I stood too. We shook hands again. As I left the office, I passed the flower shop next door. The display window had winter pansies and some dusty orchids. Nothing flashy. But something about them looked persistent. Like they'd been surviving quietly through cold seasons no one sees. I bought one. A small, low pot of yellow and violet. The florist asked, "Gift?" "No," I said. "Just something for my windowsill." I walked home with the bag tucked carefully beside me. The sun had softened by then. The wind had calmed. You know what it felt like? Not triumph. Just alignment. Like the math finally made sense. Like the weight was finally, quietly, off. I didn't expect to see her at Carson's Market. But that's how these things happen, isn't it? Not with fanfare. Not with warning. Just there, aisle 4, next to the yogurt fridge, holding a bunch of underripe bananas like she had all the time in the world. She didn't see me at first. I stood there, one hand resting lightly on the cart handle, the other still wrapped around a box of tea I had no intention of buying. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just finally seeing her clearly. Hair swept up in a messy bun. Leggings tucked into calf-high boots. Phone wedged between her shoulder and cheek as she spoke into it. Laughing softly. Not nervously. Comfortably. I waited. Not because I didn't know what to do. But because I wanted to see if she'd feel it. That small shift in air when someone who knows you is nearby. She didn't. She kept talking. Kept laughing. Dropped the bananas into her cart and turned toward the dairy section. I followed. 2 aisles later, she rounded the end cap and nearly ran into me. She froze. The phone slid from her shoulder into her hand. "Helen," she said. Voice higher than usual. Too bright. "Wow. I didn't expect to see you here." "Clearly," I said. "Calm. Even." She blinked. Adjusted the strap on her purse. Gave me that smile. The one people use when they're trying to pretend they haven't done anything wrong. How was your Thanksgiving?" She really asked that. I didn't answer right away. Just looked at her. Let the silence land. She shifted. Glanced around. Like maybe someone would walk up and save her. "It was quiet," I said. "Oh. David thought, you were staying with Nora this year." "No. You knew I had a flight. You knew what time I landed." "Well, things got a little hectic. With the twins and all. You know how it gets." "Not anymore," I said. "I don't think I do." She looked like she was about to say something else. But I cut her off. "I waited, Lauren. At the airport. With the pie you asked for. In the cardigan I bought just for dinner. I waited." She had the grace to drop her eyes. "I'm sorry. We didn't mean." "Yes, you did." The words weren't loud. But they were full. "You meant to have Thanksgiving without me. You meant to post the photos. You meant to move on and assume I'd be too polite to say anything." Her mouth opened. Closed. "You counted on my silence," I said. Just like always. She didn't argue. For once, she didn't deflect. No joke. No spin. And I didn't fill the silence either. Because sometimes that's the only truth left. We stood there for a long moment. Somewhere behind us, the intercom called for assistance at checkout 4. A child cried near the bakery. She finally said David was going to call. But he didn't, I replied. She nodded. I stepped past her. Slowly. Gently. Like walking through fog you finally stopped pretending was sunlight. Before I turned the corner, I said one last thing. I'm not angry. And I wasn't. Anger had burned off somewhere between the motel room and the lawyer's office. I just finally realized I'm not a placeholder. Not someone you call when it's convenient or when the turkey's too big. I used to think being needed meant being loved. Now I know better. I didn't look back. I left the tea on a shelf of canned soups. Walked out without buying anything. The sky had started to clear. Cold, but brighter. Back in my car, I let the heater run for a few minutes before pulling away. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. You ever have that moment when you say what you needed to say and no one claps, no one cries, but something inside you finally exhales? That was this. Not dramatic. Not victorious. Just done. And in that kind of done, there's a strange kind of peace. It's been 11 days since Thanksgiving. The pie dish is back in my cupboard. Washed, dried, tucked neatly behind the springform pen I rarely use. The suitcase is unpacked. The cardigan folded into my dresser drawer. I haven't worn it again yet. Not because of the memory, but because I want to choose when I wear it. Not let it choose me. This morning, I walked to the corner cafe. The one with the cracked tile floor and the lemon poppy muffins that are always too dry. I brought my notebook. Ordered tea. The young barista smiled as she handed me the cup. Her nails were painted deep green. There was a small ink smudge on her wrist. She didn't ask about my day. And I didn't volunteer it. I sat by the window. The sun broke through the clouds just enough to land across the table. I warmed my hands on the mug and opened to a blank page. No agenda. No letter. Just space. You ever realize how rare that is? Not silence. Not avoidance. But real space. Inside your mind. Where you're not rehearsing conversations that already happened or hoping for ones that never will. I used to think peace would come after the apology. After the call. After the right words. But peace doesn't come from other people's recognition. It comes from your own decision to stop offering yourself as proof. That's what I've learned. That waiting to be chosen, by children, by family, by anyone, is a kind of hunger that will never feed you. So I stopped. I stopped offering myself to people who only remember me when the fridge is full and the table needs a centerpiece. I stopped making excuses for the way they step around me like I'm furniture in a room they didn't choose. And you know what? The sky didn't fall. The house didn't collapse. The world kept spinning. But now, I'm in motion too. Last week I signed up for a class at the community center. Voice and Memoir. 10 sessions, Tuesdays at 6. They ask you to bring 3 stories you've never told anyone. I have dozens. Not all are tragic. Some are just true. Like the time I drove through Utah with the windows down and no map. Or the summer I almost moved to Santa Fe. Or the letter I never sent my mother after she passed. I think I'm ready now. Not to relive everything. But to reclaim it. Because that's what this season has been. A season of return. Not to them. But to me. There's a single bulb in my hallway that flickers when the heat kicks in. I used to find it annoying. But now, it reminds me I'm still here. That the world may stutter, but it doesn't stop. I'm not a victim of anyone's neglect. Not anymore. I'm the author of what comes next. Maybe that means I spend Christmas alone. Or maybe Nora comes to visit and we make boxed brownies and drink too much cocoa. Maybe I finally paint the spare room. Maybe I learn how to cook something new. What matters is, it'll be mine. My choice. My direction. Not a reaction to their distance. Not a plea for re-entry. Just a quiet, firm yes to myself. Because silence isn't weakness. Silence is what taught me how to hear my own voice again. And it's stronger than I remembered. End of story, but not of me. If this made you feel something, anything, maybe pause a moment. Ask yourself where in your own life you're still waiting for a seat that never belonged to you. And what might happen if, instead of knocking, you built your own table. I promise, the view's better from here.